everybody. My name is Dr. Alissa Ackerman, and I've been asked to talk to you today about the concept of consent. But before I do, I wanted to share a little bit about who I am and the work that I do. I'm a professor of criminal justice and a sex crimes expert based at California State University at Fullerton. And I've spent the better part of the last 15 years studying all aspects of sexual abuse. I've studied why it happens in the first place, why it remains such a significant public health problem, and how to prevent abuse and victimization from happening long before it ever occurs. And a big part of that work is consent education. So when we think about the concept of consent, we recognize that it is a mutually understood and freely given yes to some type of behavior that is going to occur. But sadly, a lot of times people are unable to say no to a behavior that is about to occur. And so oftentimes you'll hear somebody say, well, I didn't want X to happen. And then the other party says, but you didn't say no. And so I didn't know that that behavior wasn't okay. And this is because people lack a fundamental understanding of the neurobiology of trauma and the freeze and submit response. So oftentimes, if somebody is feeling uncomfortable or concerned about a behavior that their partner wants to engage in, they might not have the words because the frontal lobes of their brain go offline. And the primitive part of their brains, the amygdala and the hippocampus, take over and put them into this freeze or submit response where they physically can't say no. So many states in the US have moved to an affirmative consent model, which means that both parties have to give an enthusiastic verbal yes before behavior can occur. Now, this is a step in the right direction for sure, but it is equally problematic if there's no context and understanding to what an affirmative consent model means. So on college campuses, when we talk about affirmative consent, or we talk about consent in general, we often use the idea of a stoplight. So if you are driving towards a stoplight, it is inevitably going to turn red. And a red light means that you stop no matter what. Whereas a yellow light means, you know what, I really need to slow down and check in with my partner about this, just as you would slowing down at a yellow light. And a green is the enthusiastic, yes, let's go ahead with this behavior. So it's important for us to explain to young people both this concept of the red light, yellow light, green light, and the freeze and submit response. Because if somebody is experiencing the freeze or the submit response, they can't give that enthusiastic yes. And so we are always looking at the yellow light. We are always slowing down before we proceed. Now, oftentimes we think of sex as a dirty word. We shy away from conversations about sex and about sexual behavior. But at the end of the day, we can't shy away from the fact that humans are sexual beings. We are inherently sexual beings, whether or not we're engaging in sexual behavior. And so when we shy away from the topic, when we don't share openly and honestly answering questions that young people have, we are making it seem like sex is wrong. And so they're going to find information about it elsewhere. They're not going to come to the sources that can give them the best possible information. So as practitioners, it's really important that we use proper terminology for all body parts so that we don't inadvertently shame people. I can give you a great example. A few years ago, I took my 5-year-old to his 5-year checkup. And as the doctor was going through the entire checkup, she says, I need to look at your privates. And my son looked at me because he had no idea what this doctor was talking about. And I just simply said to him, she needs to check your penis and your scrotum. And he was like, oh, okay, why didn't you just say so in the first place? And that's because we are always using proper terminology in our household. An arm is an arm, an ear is an ear, a penis is a penis. And if we call it anything else, we are inadvertently telling children that there's something wrong with their genitals, there's something wrong with their reproductive organs. And so we really need to be careful about the language that we use. We also need to allow space for children and adolescents, as I said, to ask questions about their bodies, how their reproductive systems work, and what they can expect as they are beginning to engage in sexual behavior. If we provide safe, non-judgmental spaces for them to ask questions, they will ask, and they will only be healthier for it. Consent education with our children should begin when they are infants. When we are changing diapers, we ask permission. We say, now, we need to take care of this in this moment, but this is your body. This is not my body. This is your body, and you have control over what happens to your body, especially as you get older. So for many people, sex and anything related to sex is placed in a category of its own, instead of thinking about sex as part of the continuum of human behavior. So let's talk a little bit about the continuum of sexual behavior, right? So first we have healthy, helpful, and appropriate behavior. And then below that we have playful teasing, flirting, but it's fun, mutual behavior that stops if one person feels uncomfortable in any way, right? The other party doesn't want to make somebody feel uncomfortable, and so they stop when somebody shows that discomfort. Then there is mutually inappropriate behavior. These are consensual behaviors, but they are happening at inappropriate times or in inappropriate places. Then there is harmful bullying. So this is not fun for at least one of the people. It might be aggressive. It is certainly insensitive. Then we have harassment, which is unwanted or unwelcomed. It is against the law. It's not about intention, but it's about impact. So somebody might be saying, well, I didn't mean to cause anybody to feel discomfort. But again, it's not about what somebody intended. It's about the impact of their actions. And then finally, there is violent and illegal behavior. So lack of consent. It might be coercive. It can certainly be forceful. It can include the use of drugs and alcohol. It can also include threats or harm done. But again, this lays on a continuum with all forms of human behavior, not just sex. So we talk about it as if it is the continuum of sexual behavior, but really this has to do with any form of human interaction. So it's really important that we stop placing sex in a category of its own and reel it back in to be a part of everyday conversations that we have about any type of human interaction. Just because we think somebody should have known that their behaviors were harmful, far too often we have to take responsibility ourselves. So we think that somebody should have known that their behavior was inappropriate or harmful, but we never took the time to explain proper sexual behavior, proper human interaction. And we never took the time to explain the appropriateness of certain actions. That's why these conversations have to begin when children are really young. If we wait until they're teenagers, we've missed the mark. These conversations have to begin in infancy, in early childhood, and then throughout the life course, so that people continue to understand what is appropriate, what isn't, and that changes over time. So I want to thank you for listening, and I want you to know that if you have any questions about sexual abuse and victimization, generally speaking, or information about consent and consent education, I am happy to answer those questions. You can reach me via my website at www.alissackerman.com, or you can reach me at any of the social spaces that are listed on the slide that is presented before you. Again, I thank you for your time.